For decades, the flow of information was controlled by a deeply entrenched establishment. Legacy media operated like a fortress, heavily funded, centralized, and totally unquestioned. This animated diagram shows their operational model. A massive central node at the top pushes information downwards to a vast grid of passive consumers. They had the institutional capital to build the printing presses and broadcast towers, which gave them the ability to dictate exactly what the public saw. But massive size creates friction. Reporting moved slowly, and every story had to pass through editorial gatekeepers. Gatekeepers are executives and editors who possess the authority to decide what events are considered newsworthy and what details are published. They restricted the flow of information to a careful, curated drip. This one-way, highly controlled street eventually created a vacuum. Entire perspectives and local stories were filtered out, breeding severe audience distrust. Consumers felt ignored by the establishment and began disconnecting from the central source. By alienating large segments of their audience, the establishment made itself incredibly fragile. The structure appeared entirely intact from the outside, but it was waiting for any technological catalyst that could deliver information faster. The legacy media maintained their monopoly on the truth for as long as they did because they owned the distribution network. Accuracy was secondary. Their real power was structural control. The catalyst for disruption required nothing more than an internet connection. An anonymous individual outside the hierarchy could suddenly publish a single, unverified narrative. This diagram illustrates the structural bypass. A new, independent node routes completely around the legacy bottleneck. There are no editors, no centralized capital, and zero gatekeepers to stop the signal. The immediate consequence is a mass migration. Audiences starved for representation flock to the new, unrestricted source, instantly breaking the old media monopoly. The specific details of that first anonymous post hardly mattered. The lethal blow to the establishment was the mechanical proof that the gatekeeper could be entirely ignored. That proof opened the floodgates for independent bloggers. Instead of operating as a centralized monolith, they form a completely decentralized, hyper-reactive swarm. Looking at this feedback loop, we can see their core incentive, the attention economy. The attention economy is an environment where human focus is treated as a scarce commodity to be captured and monetized. In this system, speed triggers engagement, and engagement generates influence. Clicks replace traditional capital. To maintain that loop, they move faster than legacy media ever could. Bloggers jump to conclusions, prioritizing being first over waiting to verify facts.
But this speed is also a massive offensive advantage. A swarm of thousands of independent voices can crowdsource scrutiny, instantly highlighting the blind spots and institutional biases of the slow-moving establishment. By generating a massive volume of highly targeted noise, they force the old guard to cover stories and controversies that traditional editors would have historically preferred to filter out. The danger of this method is built right into its incentives. When speed and engagement are the only metrics for success, the swarm inevitably produces extreme clickbait, content designed primarily to provoke an emotional reaction rather than inform, and it rapidly amplifies false claims. The decentralized swarm is a highly effective weapon for tearing down old narratives. However, its total reliance on outrage as a currency makes it highly volatile and incapable of building stable consensus.
Facing this threat, the legacy media does not simply fold up and disappear. Institutions with massive financial backing and deep cultural roots protect their territory. They launch a counterattack. The establishment leverages its institutional weight and political connections to demand severe penalties, strict regulations, and the total deplatforming of the most disruptive independent bloggers. They build a narrative defense to justify this, painting the new media ecosystem as a menace to civilized society, while aggressively reasserting themselves as the only legitimate arbiters of truth. Caught in the middle are the modern tech platforms. These companies write the algorithms that act as the new referees. Because these algorithms are designed to maximize user retention, they consistently boost the chaotic bloggers, simply because that is where the audience demand actually lies. The establishment's push for top-down regulation fails to silence the swarm.
Both sides possess a strategic advantage the other cannot defeat, locking them into a permanent, escalating arms race. This diagram shows the final result of the collision. We don't get a clear victor. Instead, we get a permanent state of codependent friction between rigid, centralized capital and chaotic, decentralized attention. The modern media landscape is trapped in this dynamic. It is a perpetual pressure cooker driven by hyper-reactivity, clickbait, and constant, unresolved conflict. This exposes the core paradox of democratized news. Tearing down the elitist gates successfully brought transparency to a deeply flawed system, but it replaced orderly, curated consensus with total, deafening chaos. In this war of words, the ultimate burden has shifted. The responsibility of filtering the noise, verifying the claims, and finding the truth no longer belongs to an institutional gatekeeper. It rests entirely on the shoulders of the individual consumer.